My name is Daphne Carter. I was 32 years old when I watched my own father throw my grandfather into the snow on Christmas night. His wheelchair tipped over and landed on its side. One wheel kept spinning in the cold. It made a soft ticking sound that seemed too calm for what had just happened. My grandfather, Theodore Carter, was a small old man in a wet wool coat. He weighed almost nothing. But he still carried himself with pride. The people who shared his last name watched him fall and did nothing. My crime was simple. I stood up for him. I defended an old man at a dinner table, and my father slapped me across the face in front of 12 relatives. Nobody spoke. Nobody helped. Everyone suddenly became very interested in their plates. That night, I thought we had lost everything. 10 weeks later, I learned the truth. And the truth changed all our lives forever. Before the snow, my life was simple. I worked in a restaurant. I had spent 12 years in kitchens. Burns, long shifts, sore feet, and hard work had finally brought me close to my dream. The owner had recently told me I was ready. Chef. My own menu. My own team. My name on the board. Nobody had handed me anything. I earned every step. The only person in my family who seemed truly proud of me was my grandfather. Theodore Carter. Theo. He had suffered a stroke 3 years earlier and lived in my parents' house in a room downstairs. I called him every Sunday. Twice a month, I drove over with homemade soup. We would sit together for hours. His right leg was weak, but his hands never stopped moving. He carved little wooden birds while we talked. My parents treated him like a problem. My mother always talked about how expensive he was. My father mostly ignored him. I never understood why. A son should not look at his father with that much coldness. But there was a reason. I just didn't know it yet. A week before Christmas, my mother called. "Dinner starts at 7, she said. "And please don't let your grandfather turn it into a production." I knew exactly what she meant. "What production?" I asked. She sighed. "The wheelchair. It changes the mood." The mood. That was the word she used. Then she suggested he eat earlier in his room before the guests arrived. I gripped my knife tighter as I chopped vegetables at work. My sister Paige got on the phone next. She spent several minutes talking about an expensive watch our parents had bought her. Then she laughed. "You should leave Grandpa home. Then you can actually enjoy Christmas." I told them I was bringing him. The silence that followed told me everything. Still, I hoped I was wrong. I bought Grandpa a new flannel shirt. I ironed it myself. I wanted him to have one good Christmas. One. That was all. We arrived a few minutes before dinner. The problem started immediately. There was no space for his wheelchair. The table had seats for everyone else. Just not him. I tried to wheel him toward an open area. My father stepped in front of us. He looked at the wheelchair with open disgust. "That thing is an eyesore." Then he pushed Grandpa into a corner beside a sideboard. A bad corner. A corner away from everyone. Grandpa said nothing. He folded his hands and waited. Dinner arrived. Prime rib. Mashed potatoes. Fresh rolls. Good china. My mother served everyone. Everyone except him. When I asked where his plate was, she pointed toward the kitchen. "There's leftover ham. Cold ham. A piece of bread." That was Christmas dinner for him. Earlier that day, I had cooked his favorite braised pork and brought it to share. My mother left it untouched on the counter. Like it was something dirty. The relatives talked and laughed. Nobody seemed bothered. Then my father looked toward the corner. "You don't get a seat at this table." The room fell quiet. Grandpa smiled softly. "You sat at plenty of mine." Something changed in my father's face. For a second, he looked afraid. Then angry. I should have stayed quiet. But I couldn't. I looked around the room. An old man was eating scraps while everyone else enjoyed a feast. So I stood. "He's your father," I said. "You're feeding him leftovers in a corner." My mother told me to lower my voice. I hadn't raised it. 12 people are sitting here," I said. "Not one of you can give him a chair?" My father walked around the table. I thought he wanted to talk. Instead, he slapped me. Hard. My head snapped sideways. The room froze. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Grandpa tried to stand. His arms shook. His weak leg almost gave out. I rushed to him and put a hand on his shoulder. My cheek burned. But my voice stayed calm. "You hit me for asking you to be decent." My father adjusted his cuffs. "You don't get a seat at this table either." That was the moment I understood. This was never about a chair. It was about belonging. And we had just been told we didn't. Grandpa squeezed my hand. He wasn't surprised. That scared me more than anything. My mother walked to the front door and opened it. Cold air rushed inside. "Out," she said. "Both of you." She said it like she was canceling a subscription. No emotion. No hesitation. "We're done carrying dead weight." The words hit both of us. I felt Grandpa flinch. The only time all night his face changed. I didn't argue. I simply turned the wheelchair toward the door. If he goes, I go. Nobody stopped us. Not one person. 12 adults watched an old man in a wheelchair get thrown out into the freezing night. The loudest sound was the ticking wheel. My father followed us to the porch. Not to help. To make sure we left. The door closed behind us. The lock clicked. And suddenly we were alone. The path was icy. The wheelchair caught on frozen snow. It tipped. Grandpa fell into a snowbank. For one horrible second, I saw him lying there in the dark. I got him up immediately. His sleeve was soaked. His hands were turning red. The wheelchair wheel jammed with snow. I half carried him to my car. He felt impossibly light. Nobody tells you that part. The people who raised you eventually become fragile. I got him into the passenger seat. Turned on the heat. Put my gloves on his hands. He was shivering so hard his teeth rattled. Yet he still complained about my driving. I talked the entire ride home. Anything to keep him awake. The weather. Work. Food. Nothing important. 20 minutes later, we reached my apartment. I carried him upstairs. Made broth. Wrapped him in blankets. And sat beside him until he finally stopped shaking. That night, while he slept, I stared into the darkness. One bed. One paycheck. One elderly man who needed care. I didn't cry. I made a plan. The next few weeks were difficult. He took my bed. I took the couch. Every morning I helped him get dressed. Every evening I came home from work and found him carving wood by the window. One weekend I fixed the wheelchair. The wheel had been broken for months. While repairing it, I noticed 2 letters carved underneath the armrest. W.O. What does that mean? I asked. An old habit, he said. Then he changed the subject. That night he finished carving a small bird. A wren. Beautiful. Detailed. Alive. He stared at it for a long time before placing it on the windowsill. I had seen him carve birds my entire life. I never thought to ask why. Money became tight. Medicine was expensive. Bills kept coming. I worked extra shifts. Skipped small luxuries. Stopped buying coffee. Counted every dollar. My family continued reaching out. Not because they cared. Because they wanted control. My mother offered me a room. But only for me. Leave him, she said. Come home. I looked at Grandpa sleeping in my bed. A man who had never treated me like a burden. And I knew my answer. No. I hung up. A few days later, something strange happened. We were in a hardware store buying supplies. An older man stopped and stared at Grandpa. You look exactly like someone I used to work for, he said. The best in the business. Grandpa smiled politely. People tell me that. The man left. I looked at Grandpa. Who did he think you were? Nobody. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. And Grandpa always met my eyes. The questions started growing after that. My sister sent cruel messages. One photo showed her expensive watch. The caption read, "Enjoy your charity case." My mother wrote long messages about how I was wasting my life. My father never contacted me at all. After a while, I blocked all three. The apartment became quieter. Peaceful. You don't have to fight them for me, Grandpa said. I'm not fighting them, I answered. I'm just done giving them my time. He nodded. Then returned to carving. In late January he began telling stories. Stories about wood shops. Factories. Workers. A company he built from almost nothing. Carter and Sons, he said once. His mouth tightened around the word sons. What happened to it? I asked. He was quiet. The year they took it all. Who took it? He never answered. Instead he said something that stayed with me forever. They can take what you build. Never what you are. At the time, I thought it was simply wisdom. I didn't understand it was also a warning. One Thursday, a certified letter arrived. The envelope came from a law firm called Crane and Holloway Trustees. Inside was a document mentioning something called Ashford Mill. I had never heard those words before. When I showed it to Grandpa, his hand stopped moving. For a moment, he looked older. What is Ashford Mill? I asked. Old paperwork. That's it? Leave it alone. So I did. Mostly. But curiosity got the better of me. During a break at work, I searched online. Ashford Mill wasn't abandoned. It was huge. Factories. Warehouses. Hundreds of employees. A successful company. I stared at photos on my phone and tried to connect them to the man living in my apartment. Nothing made sense. That evening I asked him again. He squeezed my hand. I am exactly where I chose to be. Then he asked me not to push further. So I stopped. It was his secret. Not mine. There was one perfect day in early February. The sun was shining. I had a day off. I cooked his favorite braised pork. The recipe he taught my grandmother decades earlier. The apartment filled with the smell of garlic and herbs. He sat at the table directing every step. Lower heat. Be patient. Don't rush. We ate together. He finished 2 full servings. After lunch he handed me a small wooden wren. Smaller than the others. More detailed. For you. I thanked him. But he didn't let go immediately. I only carved these for people who would never leave me in the cold. I couldn't speak. So I simply held it. It felt warm in my hand. I slipped it into my coat pocket. I carried it everywhere after that. A week later, he got sick. First a cough. Then a fever. Then weakness. He slept more. Ate less. The signs were impossible to ignore. One night his fever became dangerous. I called an ambulance. While packing his things, I slipped the wooden bird into the bag. And the trustee letter. For some reason, I felt they mattered. At the hospital, doctors confirmed pneumonia. His heart was weak. His body was tired. The future suddenly felt very short. Then my parents arrived. For one foolish second, I hoped they came because they cared. I was wrong. My mother immediately started performing. Talking loudly about everything she had done for him. Making sure nurses heard. Making sure strangers admired her. My father barely looked at Grandpa. Instead, they kept asking questions. Not about his health. About paperwork. About documents. About whether he was still thinking clearly. They weren't worried. They were hunting. That night they left. Around 3 a.m, Grandpa woke. His eyes were clear. Sharp. Almost peaceful. He asked me to sit closer. Then he placed the trustee letter and wooden bird into my hands. Keep these together. I nodded. He squeezed my fingers. When this is over, don't fight them. What do you mean? Let them have the noise. Then he gave me instructions. Call Nathaniel Brooks. The lawyer? Yes. Why? He'll explain. Explain what? He smiled. Some things must be shown. I begged him to tell me. He shook his head. Then he repeated the words I had heard before. They can take what you build. Never what you are. I started crying. He reached up and touched my face. I've known who you are since you were 5 years old. Then he closed his eyes. I never heard his voice again. He died at 4:51 that morning. Quietly. Peacefully. His hand remained in mine until it grew cold. I sat beside him until sunrise. Then I began making calls. Funeral home. Work. Paperwork. Tasks. Some people grieve through tears. I grieve through action. Finally, I called Nathaniel Brooks. He returned my call within 40 minutes. His voice sounded prepared. Almost like he had been expecting it. There is a great deal to discuss, he said. The funeral was exactly what Grandpa predicted. My parents took control immediately. Cheap service. Short ceremony. Lots of performance. Very little love. Nobody asked me to speak. Nobody cared what he would have wanted. The night before the funeral, I stopped by my parents' house. My mother was alone in the kitchen. For once, there was no audience. She looked tired. Fragile. She told me about growing up poor. About holes in her shoes. About never feeling safe. For one moment, I saw the scared girl she used to be. Then it vanished. We did what we had to do, she said coldly. And the walls went back up. The day after the funeral, Nathaniel Brooks called again. There will be a formal reading of the will. I expected paperwork. Nothing more. Instead he warned me. Do not sign anything. Do not agree to anything. And do not discuss the trustee letter with your family. His tone made my stomach tighten. For the first time, I wondered if my family knew something I didn't. 9 days later, I walked into Crane and Holloway's office. The building occupied an entire floor of a glass tower. That alone shocked me. Then I saw something hanging on the wall. A logo. A small carved wren. Underneath were 2 words. Wren and Oak. W.O. The same letters carved into Grandpa's wheelchair. The same letters I had seen months earlier. The same letters I suddenly understood mattered. Inside the conference room sat my parents. Paige. A lawyer named Victor Hale. And Nathaniel Brooks. Beside him sat Grandpa's wheelchair. The room felt strange. Heavy. Like everyone was waiting for a storm. Nathaniel opened a thick folder. The estate of Theodore R. Carter, he began. My father laughed. Let's keep this quick. Nathaniel ignored him. Then he read the first number. The company known as Wren and Oak was worth approximately $1.1 billion. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. My mother looked stunned. Paige lowered her phone. My father turned white. Nathaniel repeated the number. Then he explained. Factories. Properties. Warehouses. Showrooms. Hundreds of acres. Millions upon millions of dollars. The old man they called Dead Weight had quietly built an empire. Then Nathaniel placed a hand on the wheelchair. The founder's mark, he said. W.O. Wren and Oak. Everything suddenly made sense. The birds. The carving. The letters. The silence. My father finally found his voice. If he was rich, why was he living in my house? Nathaniel turned another page. And everything exploded. 27 years earlier, while Grandpa was recovering from a serious health crisis, documents had been signed. Or rather, forged. Ownership of his original company had been stolen. The signatures were fake. The transfer illegal. The thieves? Grant Carter. My father. And Victor Hale. The lawyer sitting across the room. Nobody spoke. The air itself seemed frozen. Nathaniel explained that Grandpa discovered the theft. But instead of spending years fighting in court, he started over. He built a new company. A bigger company. A better company. And he spent 25 years preparing for this moment. My father looked sick. Victor Hale tried to leave. Nathaniel stopped him. Then came the next bombshell. Wren and Oak secretly owned the debt attached to my father's company. They also owned the mortgage on my parents' house. The very house where Grandpa had been called Dead Weight. The very house where we had been thrown into the snow. My mother made a choking sound. My father stared in disbelief. The truth was brutal. The man they treated like a burden had been supporting them all along. Then Nathaniel reached the final page. The entire estate passes to Daphne Marie Carter. Silence. No shared inheritance. No equal division. No second chances. Everything. To me. My father exploded. He accused me of manipulation. Lies. Fraud. Greed. My mother immediately switched to tears. Paige looked stunned. For a brief moment, she actually seemed ashamed. I listened. I waited. Then I spoke. Quietly. You hit me. The room stopped. You hit me because I asked you to give an old man a chair. My father said nothing. He earned every table you ever sat at. Still nothing. I took the small wooden wren from my pocket and placed it on the table. Tiny. Simple. Worthless to anyone who didn't understand. Then I repeated Grandpa's words. You took what he built. I looked directly at my father. You never touched what he was. Nobody had an answer. Not one. The loudest people in my life had finally run out of noise. The truth had beaten them. Not me. The truth. After that, I made my choices carefully. I didn't seek revenge. I followed the law. Evidence went to investigators. Civil actions moved forward. Old thefts were challenged. New crimes were examined. I offered my mother a small apartment for 2 years. A chance to start over. She refused. So I stopped trying. I wasn't being cruel. I was simply allowing consequences to arrive. My father was later charged with fraud and elder financial abuse. Victor Hale lost his law license. My father's company collapsed. The house was lost. The life built on lies finally cracked apart. Paige moved away. Sometimes she sends short messages. They never ask for anything. That is probably the closest apology she can manage. I run Wren and Oak now. Not because I wanted power. Because Grandpa trusted me. His wheelchair sits in my office. The repaired wheel still turns smoothly. Visitors ask about it. I tell them it belonged to the founder. The little wooden wren sits on my desk facing the window. Just like the birds on his windowsill. Every Friday, the company cafeteria serves slow-braised pork in red sauce. His recipe. My hands. 600 workers eat it every week. Most have no idea whose recipe it is. They only know it tastes like someone cared. And maybe that's enough. Because that was Grandpa's real gift. Not the money. Not the company. Not the inheritance. His real gift was showing me that character matters more than wealth. People can steal businesses. They can steal houses. They can steal opportunities. But they can never steal who you choose to be. One cold Christmas night, a wheelchair landed in a snowbank. An old man was thrown away. But in the end, the truth stood back up. And the quietest person in the room got the last word. If this story stayed with you, remember the people others ignore. Call them. Visit them. Let them know they matter. Sometimes the person sitting alone in the corner is carrying more than anyone can imagine. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories like this. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place?